Their empire was worth millions, built on friendship and diesel smoke. But behind the TV smiles, it was all about to burn down, buried under nearly $13 million in fines and penalties. The world knew them as the Diesel Brothers, but the truth was much darker. One man's reckless ambition would cost them everything, and his best friend, Diesel Dave, was forced to watch in silence, his loyalty turning to pure hatred. The brotherhood that never was. On television, they looked like the perfect team. Four friends, laughing and joking as they built some of the biggest and baddest trucks the world had ever seen. There was Dave Sparks, the leader known as Heavy D. There was Josh Stewart, the money man called Red Beard, and Keaton Hoskins, known as the Muscle. Rounding out the crew was David Kiley, or Diesel Dave, Heavy D's best friend and right-hand man. They called themselves the Diesel Brothers, and their show on the Discovery Channel was a massive hit. Fans loved their wild stunts, their elaborate pranks, and the feeling that they were watching a tight-knit family who loved what they did. But behind the cameras, a very different story was unfolding. The foundation of their entire brand, the very name Diesel Brothers, was built on a lie. They were not brothers at all. They were friends who had gone into business together, and that business was heading straight for a cliff. While Heavy D was chasing fame and pushing the limits, he was also making decisions that would put his friends, his company, and their entire future in jeopardy. And Diesel Dave, the man who had been there from the very beginning, had a front row seat to the disaster. He was about to lose everything he had worked for, all because of the one person he trusted the most. This wasn't a brotherhood. It was a business deal gone wrong, and it created a rift so deep that friendship could never fix it. The first crack, when ambition turned toxic. The story of the Diesel Brothers began with two best friends and a dream. Dave Sparks, or Heavy D, was obsessed with vehicles from a young age. He grew up in Utah and spent most of his time in high school learning auto mechanics, welding, and fabrication. He even enrolled in college to study these skills, but dropped out after just one semester, feeling he could learn more by doing things himself in the real world. He started his own small excavation business, and in 2008, he hired his very first employee. That employee was his best friend, David Kiley, who would soon be known to the world as Diesel Dave. Together, they started building their dream company, Diesel Sellers. Heavy D was the visionary, the one with the wild ideas and the drive to make them happen. He started posting videos of their crazy truck builds online, and people loved it. The videos went viral, catching the attention of producers in Hollywood. Soon, Heavy D and his crew appeared on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno. After that, the Discovery Channel called, and the Diesel Brothers became TV stars. Heavy D's ambition had paid off. He had taken a small shop and turned it into a national sensation. But that same ambition had a dark side. To make their brand stand out, Heavy D created a rebellious, in-your-face image. A huge part of that image was something called rolling coal. This is when a diesel truck is modified to spew thick black clouds of smoke from its exhaust pipes. They posted videos of their trucks smoking out smaller cars like a Prius, and it became their signature move. It looked cool to some of their fans and perfectly fit the bad boy brand Heavy D was building. There was just one problem. It was completely illegal. The black smoke was a sign that the truck's pollution control systems had been removed. These systems are required by federal law under the Clean Air Act to protect people's health from harmful pollutants. By removing them, the Diesel Brothers were breaking the law every time they built one of their signature trucks, and people were starting to notice. In 2016, a group of doctors in Utah called Utah Physicians for a Healthy Environment had seen enough. They filed a lawsuit against the Diesel Brothers, accusing them of repeatedly violating the Clean Air Act. The doctors group even bought one of the trucks the Diesel Brothers had modified and had it tested. The results were shocking. The truck was putting out 36 times more pollution than a normal truck. The lawsuit claimed the crew had illegally removed essential parts like diesel particulate filters, or DPFS, and exhaust gas recirculation systems, known as EGRS. These actions, the lawsuit said, were creating a serious risk to human health. This was a disaster, and it was a direct result of the brand image Heavy D had created. But it was about to get much worse for Diesel Dave. The lawsuit was not just against the company. It named the stars of the show personally. The people who would be held responsible were David Sparks, Joshua Stewart, Keaton Hoskins, and Dave Kiley. Diesel Dave, the loyal best friend, was now personally on the hook for the reckless decisions made by his boss. The legal battle dragged on for years, but the Diesel brothers lost. In March 2020, a federal judge ordered them to pay a massive fine of more than $850,000. The judge found that they had violated the Clean Air Act hundreds of times and showed what he called flagrant misconduct. Heavy D's ambition had made them famous, but it had also made them criminals in the eyes of the law. For Diesel Dave, this was the first major crack in their friendship. He was now facing a huge financial penalty because of a culture created and promoted by Heavy D. The dream they had built together was turning into a nightmare, and Diesel Dave was trapped in the middle of it. He hated what was happening, and he hated the man responsible for it. The million-dollar mistake that bled them dry. Just as the crew was trying to deal with the fallout from their environmental lawsuit, another legal bomb was about to drop. This one had nothing to do with black smoke or pollution. It had to do with a single word, the very word they had built their entire brand around: diesel. And this mistake would end up costing them more than 10 times what the first lawsuit did. It was another catastrophic failure of leadership, and it pushed Diesel Dave even further away from his old friend. Back in 2019, while they were still fighting the Clean Air Act case, a world-famous Italian fashion company filed a lawsuit against them. That company was Diesel, a brand known for its high-end jeans and clothing. The fashion brand argued that the Diesel brothers were confusing the marketplace. Their merchandise company was called Diesel Power Gear, and their truck marketplace was Diesel Sellers. The fashion company said these names were too similar to their own, and that the Diesel brothers were illegally profiting off a brand name that had been famous for decades. This was not a simple misunderstanding. It was a problem that Heavy D and the company leadership had been warned about. Before the lawsuit was even filed, the fashion brand sent the Diesel brothers a cease and desist letter. This is a legal document that tells someone to stop doing something that is infringing on your rights. It was a clear warning shot, a chance to fix the problem before it ended up in court. But the Diesel brothers ignored it. They continued to sell their merchandise under the Diesel Power Gear name, acting as if the warning never happened. That decision would prove to be a colossal mistake. When the case went to court, the judge sided with the fashion brand. The court found that the names were confusingly similar and that the Diesel brothers had infringed on the trademark. But the judge went even further. He said that their actions were willful. This is a very important legal term. It means they did not just make an innocent mistake. The court believed they acted with reckless disregard for the fashion brand's trademark rights. They knew what they were doing was wrong, or at least very risky, and they did it anyway. This showed a pattern of behavior. Just like with the pollution laws, Heavy D and his team seemed to believe they were above the rules. They thought they could get away with it. They were wrong. The judge initially considered forcing them to pay back all the profits they had ever made from their merchandise, a staggering sum of over $59 million. In the end, the judge decided that amount would be excessive, but the final penalty was still devastating. The Diesel brothers were ordered to pay $11.8 million in damages to the fashion company. For Diesel Dave, this was another nightmare. He was a co-founder of Diesel Power Gear, the company at the center of the lawsuit. He had to watch as a reckless branding decision, a decision to ignore a clear legal warning, cost them a fortune. They were now on the hook for two massive legal judgments totaling nearly $13 million. Their company was bleeding money, and its reputation was in tatters. All of this could have been avoided with better leadership and less arrogance. Diesel Dave had started this journey with his best friend to build trucks. Now he was a partner in two multi-million-dollar legal disasters, both caused by the same man's refusal to follow the rules. The trust was gone, replaced by a deep and bitter resentment. A trail of bad judgment. The two massive lawsuits were not isolated incidents. They were part of a much larger pattern of terrible judgment that seemed to follow Heavy D wherever he went. While Diesel Dave and the rest of the crew were trying to manage the financial and legal chaos, Heavy D was busy creating new public relations nightmares. These moments of public shame showed a profound lack of respect for their fans and a shocking lack of integrity, further proving that he was a liability to the brand and everyone involved. One of the most bizarre and self-destructive episodes was the Z-Car debacle. The crew got their hands on a collection of about 70 classic Datsun and Nissan Z-Cars, beloved sports cars from the 70s and 80s. Instead of trying to save or sell them to collectors, they decided to film a YouTube video of themselves crushing the cars with heavy machinery. The video showed a Z-pocalypse with classic cars being flattened for entertainment. The backlash from the car community, their own core audience, was immediate and fierce. Fans were furious that these classic vehicles were being destroyed just for YouTube views. The uproar was so bad that the original video was deleted, and Heavy D had to post a new video apologizing. He claimed that the cars were all beyond repair, rusted out, or had been stolen and could not be legally titled. He also made a weak excuse, saying that the video was posted by his production crew without his final review. But this excuse only made him look worse. It showed a complete lack of supervision within his own company and a failure to understand his own audience. Crushing classic cars was a direct insult to the very people who had made them famous. It was a self-inflicted wound that damaged their reputation even more. But as bad as that was, what came next was even worse. At a time when the Diesel Brothers brand was already associated with breaking the law, Heavy D decided to publicly align himself with a convicted criminal. That criminal was Trevor Milton, the founder of a company called Nikola Corporation, which claimed to be building revolutionary electric and hydrogen-powered trucks. It turned out that much of Nikola's technology was a lie. Milton was convicted of fraud for repeatedly misleading investors about his company's products. He was a con artist who had cheated people out of millions of dollars. Instead of distancing himself from Milton, Heavy D did the opposite. He went on YouTube and called the convicted fraudster a good friend. He even joked about some of the scams Nikola had pulled. This was a stunning display of bad judgment. Milton had even tried to get Heavy D nominated to Nikola's board of directors, a move that the company strongly opposed. The public was disgusted. On social media platforms like Reddit, fans turned on Heavy D, calling him a crooked con man for supporting Milton. People who had lost money investing in Nikola because of the hype created by people like Heavy D felt betrayed. For Diesel Dave, this pattern of behavior must have been infuriating. It is one thing to deal with past mistakes and try to rebuild a damaged brand. It is another thing entirely to watch your business partner actively create new controversies that make recovery impossible. Heavy D's actions showed a complete disconnect from reality. He was alienating his fans and tying his brand to criminals, all while the company was fighting for its financial life. It was a slap in the face to Diesel Dave and everyone else who depended on the company for their livelihood. It was clear that Heavy D cared more about his own ego and his questionable friendships than he did about the well-being of the brand or the people who had helped him build it. The hatred Diesel Dave felt was no longer just about money. It was about a fundamental lack of character and integrity. The real reason the show got canceled. With millions of dollars in fines, a mountain of legal fees, and a reputation destroyed by endless controversy, something had to give. That something was their hit TV show. After 8 seasons, Diesel Brothers quietly came to an end in 2022. The official story from the company was a carefully crafted piece of public relations. They claimed the show was not canceled. Instead, they said that they had decided to walk away from television to go back to their roots on YouTube. They wanted more creative freedom and the ability to be more authentic, to show the real day-to-day work of their shop without network oversight. But the timeline of events tells a very different and much darker story. The official explanation was a convenient way to save face, but the truth was that the Diesel Brothers brand had become too toxic for a major network like Discovery to support. The end of the show was not a choice they made. It was the inevitable consequence of years of reckless behavior. It was the ultimate price they paid for Heavy D's failures as a leader. Consider the timing. The show ended in 2022. Just 1 year before that, in 2021, the legal battle over the Clean Air Act violations finally came to a close. An appeals court upheld the original verdict, confirming the judge's finding of flagrant misconduct on the part of the Diesel Brothers. Their legal appeals had failed. They were officially and permanently branded as a company that had willfully and repeatedly broken federal law. At the same time, they were dealing with the $11.8 million judgment in the trademark case. Their name was now synonymous with legal trouble. Major television networks like Discovery are massive corporations that have to protect their own brand and their relationships with advertisers. A show whose stars have been found guilty of flagrant misconduct, fined nearly $13 million in 2 separate high-profile lawsuits, and whose main star publicly supports convicted fraudsters becomes a giant liability. Advertisers get nervous about associating their products with such a controversial brand. The network itself risks damaging its own reputation by continuing to promote them. The idea that they simply chose to walk away from a hit TV show and the millions of dollars in revenue that came with it, right as their legal troubles were reaching their peak, does not make sense. The more logical conclusion is that the show became unsustainable for Discovery Channel. The constant negative press, the serious legal judgments, and the ongoing public relations disasters made them too risky to keep on the air. The end of the show was not about gaining creative freedom. It was about losing the platform that had made them all rich and famous. For Diesel Dave, this was the final, crushing blow. He had started in a small shop with his best friend, and together they had reached the top of the reality TV world. Now, that was all gone. The show was over, the brand was tarnished, and their financial future was uncertain. And it had all happened because of the actions of one man. The dream that Diesel Dave had signed up for was dead, and he had no one to blame but Heavy D. A friendship in the wreckage. The story of the Diesel Brothers is a story of a rapid rise and a spectacular fall. They went from a small Utah garage to international television stardom, building an empire on the back of monster trucks and a fun-loving, rebellious image. But in the end, that empire was left in ruins, buried under a mountain of debt and controversy. The final bill for Heavy D's reckless leadership was staggering. Over $850,000 in fines for violating the Clean Air Act, and a nearly $12 million judgment for willfully infringing on a trademark. Their reputation was destroyed, their integrity was questioned, and their hit TV show was gone. Through all of it, Diesel Dave Kiley stood by his friend's side, at least in public. He never spoke out, never placed blame, and never aired their dirty laundry. But his silence speaks louder than words ever could. The mountain of evidence from the court documents calling out their flagrant misconduct to the public embrace of convicted criminals tells the whole story. It is a story of a friendship broken by ego and a dream destroyed by arrogance. Diesel Deve may never break his silence, but the wreckage of their empire is all the confirmation needed. It is a silent testament to how one man's terrible judgment cost his best friend everything, and why that friend hated him for it.